All right, my friends. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being on time. I want to get started because we only have an hour, and I want to do my best to honor that hour for each of us each week. So I have some housekeeping things before we begin. Ironically enough, you three that are on this call are the only three that have turned in their homework. Other people said they did it, but they didn't turn it in. So applause to the three of you for not only doing the homework, but remembering that last step, which is to turn it in so that I can review it ahead of time. My only ask is that in the future, going forward, if you guys could send it to me at least 48 hours before the next class, so I can actually have time to review it and sit with it, gather my thoughts around it, and then be able to provide quality feedback to you. So that would be my one ask. So I will drop in the chat here my email. So when you do it, because I do have more than one email, um, if you could send it to this email here, that keeps my email organized and clean. Yes, Rebecca, be on camera. Don't not be on camera. If you can be on camera, be on camera. Um, but anyway, so that Kendall at theindustryspeaks.com is my academy email. So I know for those of you, many of you have my other email, which is my team email. That's like real estate related. I'm trying to keep the two businesses separate so that way I can be organized. So when you do your homework, send it to Kendall at theindustryspeaks.com. So at least 48 hours ahead of time so that I can review it and get you that feedback that you're looking for. So one other source of a question mark, and I hate that not everyone's on the call, but so I'll ask this question now, and hopefully I'll remember to ask it again at the end. I am asking your permission to move our call next week. What happened was I have a speaking event in another state, and it was supposed to be Monday, Tuesday, and then it turned into Tuesday, Wednesday. And so when I booked all of this, I had that time available. And then now it turns out that with that event, it's an hour away. I won't be able to be at the hotel. I'll literally be in the airport. I won't be flying, but I'll be in the airport at this time. And I kind of feel like that is a terrible experience for each of you for me to be at the airport while trying to do this training. So I have a couple of ideas, and if we can all agree to move it just this one, if it works for you, we'll move it. If it doesn't work for you guys, I will power through. I don't know what I will do. I'll find a way. I don't know. Unfortunately, I tried to figure it out, but it's been complicated. So the options are Thursday, the day after, Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern or 4 p.m. Eastern are one option. And so here, let me put these in here. So Thursday at 3 p.m. ET or 4 p.m. ET, or Friday, the day after at 12 p.m. ET. So those are the options to move it. Do we, are any of these immediate conflicts on Thursdays? So
Yes.
Friday's better for you, Cindy. Okay.
Well, I mean, I am already teaching my school from 4 to 6 on Thursday, so I can't move that. So
Oh,
I could, potentially come 3 to 4. Just again, it's a little tight, running in two, but it's possible. And Friday looks good.
okay.
Mhm.
So we have one vote for Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern, and I'm pretty sure I'm good. Let me triple check because I always think I'm good, and then something happens. I'm like, I'm good. No, I am good. I do have that off ready. Does anybody have an objection to 12 p.m. on Friday Eastern, which is 9 a.m. Pacific?
Um, and it's fine. And 12 p.m. will work. It will work. I will be finishing teaching at Star in Tampa at 11:30. So assuming they let me sit for an hour somewhere, which I think now with the new staff they do, but they were a little wiggy before. But yeah, I'll just figure out. So yeah, I don't have anything after it.
Okay. All right. So far everyone can do either 3 p.m. on Thursday or Friday. So do we have a preference? Because I don't care. Both of those work for me. Please unmute, ladies.
I'm good with either or.
Yeah, I'm flexible as well.
Okay. Maisha, you
I'm
want, okay.
I'm
Yes, Ollie?
flexible as I'm flexible as well. Sorry about that.
Okay. Ollie?
I'll make it work.
Okay. So then let's do Thursday at 3 then. And that way, Cindy, you can hop off early if you need 5-10 minutes, because usually at the end we're trying to do Q&A anyway. So that way Friday is a clean day. So we'll do Thursday at 3. Okay. And I apologize. I normally do not like to move schedules around at all, but I was just thinking like I've been in airports late, a lot of airports, and if I can find a quiet, like if I can get into a lounge, something like that, that's helpful. But I'm going to be in Detroit and I don't know a lot about their lounge, like if they even have one. Like I was in two airports recently, they didn't even have a lounge. So I didn't even have anywhere to go. So next week's meeting will be Thursday. I think that's May 7th at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific. I will also put that in, yes, they are unpredictable. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I will post that in the chat. All right, beautiful. So again, okay, so now my next question as we get started is I want to reflect on last week, right? So a lot of you did your work. Like I think I said at the top, 3 of you turned in your homework. Some of you, I know others of you did the homework, but you didn't turn it in. So I just want to encourage you to email your homework to me. I had at least 2 days, 48 hours before our next class, so I can review it and have time to review everyone's so I can come back with meaningful feedback. But I thought, you also had your notebook. Is everyone using their notebook? Have you printed out your notebook yet?
I just
If,
sent mine to be printed like 2 days ago and I put a rush on it, so hopefully I'll get it soon.
yes, beautiful. So
I
we're
sent mine, so I'll have it by next week.
okay, beautiful. So one of the things that I wanted you guys, there was reflection questions at the end of last week. So whether you answered the question then or not, I want you to look at your homework from last week, right? Your message statement, your core audience, your audience transformation. And I'd like for each of you to answer the last question for me, which is, do you have one sentence that you would most want your audience to carry with them after your talk, right? And if you want, I'll give you an example of mine, like as I have 2 talks I'm working right now that I've been delivering, and I could tell you what my sentences are for both of those. And then after you give me your sentence, I'm going to tell you what I think, why I think it's so important and how I think it'll support you. So would anybody like to volunteer their either what they already wrote in their notebook or what is top of mind based on their work that they did last week?
I'll share my one sentence. And to sum it up, it says, "People remember how you made them feel."
Okay. That's what you want your audience to walk away with as their core lesson after they hear you speak.
Yes.
Okay. And that's going to come, Ollie, not from how you made them feel, but how they will feel when they work with their real estate clients, right? That's what you're talking about. Like you're going to teach them how to impact their client base through your talk, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Just making sure that we're dotting all the T's, like I'm tracking. Thank you, Ollie, for sharing. Who else?
I'll go. I'm formulating the thoughts like in real time, but just with the messaging that I'm focusing on, I would say that breakthrough comes when you surrender to what you're called to become.
Mm. So breakthrough happens, and maybe it's less about surrender so much as accept,
Mm-hmm.
right? Breakthrough comes when you accept who you are called to be, right?
Mhm.
Because I just feel like if you say surrender to it, that feels like it's not like you're really what you're trying to say is stop resisting and just take it
Which
in.
is surrendering in itself. It's just,
Yeah.
but it
Yeah,
is, it's allowing and accepting.
yeah, I think it's like just let's accept it. Accept it. Very good. Cindy, how about you?
Um, so it's funny. So this will be good for next time because I didn't get my head in the game. So I'm going from like I was all immersed and like on cloud nine, and now I'm like from a flat start. So I'm trying to like pull my notes, pull whatever. But I
Yeah.
just looked back and I would kind of say that the theme was for me that expertise that isn't explained isn't recognized by clients or AI, right?
Mhm.
So we have expertise, we build trust, but again, if we're not communicating it in a way that people are receiving it, then we're kind of the invisible person or agent.
Yeah. So I'm going to challenge you to try to work through putting that into one sentence. Like, so I'll give you an example of a sentence that's very similar to that I was taught. Value unarticulated is value unappreciated.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you need to come up with your version of that statement. Right. And the reason why this is, well, let me keep going and then I'll tell you guys the reason why it's important. Rebecca, you're muted, babe.
Yes. Sorry, did you ask me a question? I didn't
Yes,
hear.
I was asking a question. What's your one sentence that you would want your audience to take away from your talk when you deliver it?
So, I don't think that I've thought about a one sentence, and I didn't see this particular exercise, so I'm actually working on it. But what I want them to take away is Hmm. Because I feel like that's been part of my problem is that I have too many things with the brand. So like, what's the one thing I have all these things swimming in my head. So like to narrow it down is that I guess that you can work in harmony with your spouse and create the life that you love, design the life that you love.
Together, right? I imagine, because you're
Mhm.
talking about your married and real estate
Right,
framework and stuff. Yeah,
right.
got got it, got it. All right, Maisha, I know you were working through your stuff last week.
I was working through my stuff and I was doing a lot of reflection. So for me, um, I'm switching my focus really to women and not just women in real estate, but just women buying back their time. So, like, I guess, one sentence that I would want people to reflect on walking away from, an experience of me talking would really be about, you know, let me think of my sentence. My sentence would more be about buying your time, owning your time, and the wealth in that. Because I think so many people think about wealth as financial. So I really want people to walk away changing their idea of wealth. So wealth is time. Wealth is your experiences. Wealth is your health. It's your frame of mind. It's not just about money. So I really want people to switch the conversation from generational wealth just being about money and being about just health and safety and mindset. So, and I want that to be something for women because so many women, I think, struggle with just trying to be everything to everybody and not being them and not owning who they are themselves and taking care of themselves. So it's causing, I think, a lot of conflict.
Very good. Very interesting. Well, here's the challenge for all of you. Your goal is to get a core idea together into one sentence, something that doesn't in your opportunity to explain it happens in the talk. Like your one sentence shouldn't be something you have to explain here. But it happens through the talk and it should be the one sentence that you might repeat throughout your talk multiple times. So I'll give you two examples I have two different presentations and they serve two different goals. One of them is one of the talks is um, the algorithm inside you is the name of the talk, right? But the statement is your brain recognizes pattern, but growth requires disruption. That's the message. That's the thing I want them to walk away with. Now, in the talk, I explain like what all that means and how that, why that would apply. But the point is I want them to remember that one statement. And so each of you are challenged to do that. Another one for my motivated mover for the book that I wrote, my statement for the motivated mover is every real estate transaction starts with a life event, not a marketing campaign. Right? It's a one-liner that I can remember, that becomes one of my talking points, that becomes, and as I say these single lessons, each of you, if you haven't heard the talk before, you might be curious, like, what does that mean if I'm having a conversation? But more importantly, when I have the talk and you were to experience the talk, you would know exactly what I'm talking about. But you will remember, by remembering that one sentence, you will remember what my entire talk was about. Does that make sense? That's what you're looking to achieve, is having that one sentence that explains your talk and what you're trying to do without a long paragraph, without, all the explainer. But it's that one sentence, right? So that's what I want to encourage you guys to do. And I want to make sure that each of you, again, last week we started, this is an intensive, this is a workshop. We are working through things as we go. I'm going to highly recommend that as we go through this process, I'm recording these, go back and listen to it again, right? Go back and listen to it. Sometimes it's good to watch, but sometimes it's also just good to just listen, like have the words playing in the background as you're thinking through some of this stuff, and creating your own versions of the talk. The other thing I want to say is you guys will be getting access to an AI to help you through all of this. But I do want to encourage you these first couple of weeks to use less AI and more just quiet thinking time for some of this, because AI will influence the direction you go with a lot of this. And what I'm noticing as I watch people who are using AI to create talks, not just in this room, but like all over, right? Like I'm working with a lot of different people. There's a thread I'm watching through these talks where they all sound the same. You guys are all, not you out, but speakers are all starting to sound the same, and they're all picking up on the same concepts, same ideas. Like I'm literally watching and reading concepts. I'm like, oh my God, I've already seen this before over here. And what's the connecting factor is AI, right? So when it comes to last week, what your message is, what's your message statement? I know the temptation to use AI is strong, but I really think you should sit down with it and rewrite it in your own words, right? As succinctly as possible. The second piece is the story bank. Again, AI can't tell your story. Only you can. AI might be able to help you organize it, but I definitely, you can't rely on AI for this part for today, right? So I'm not an anti-AI user. Like anyone knows me knows I love AI. I use it all the time. But when it comes to some of this stuff, AI can't replace you and the beauty of your brain, your insights, your lessons, your story, your message, the reframe that you're trying to offer people. That has to come from within. That has to come, when that comes from your heart, that is when, number one, it's easy to remember. It's easy to retell. It's easy to expand and contract because it belongs to you, right? Fully. It's fully yours. So, all right, as we get into this, let me share my screen. So today we are talking about story mining. And you guys can see my screen, right? Let me move this down here. And I'm going to shrink this over here. All right. So today we're talking about story mining. And I want to, have you guys really think today, we're going to think deeply on how we turn your experience into teachable insights. Okay. So that's the focus of this week. So last week we built your message, your audience, your transformation, right? And this is really important because, again, most speakers never have a clear message, right? They know what they want to say typically, but they never take the time to really break it down into one clear foundational sentence, a before and after transformation, and even really truly identify a core audience that they want to speak to, right? So now what you want to share with others, who you want to share it to, and what changes for the audience that you're working with, right? And I think that's super important. And so over here, we're now this week we're going to talk about how do you prove that, right? So we're answering a different question this time. How do you prove this, or how do you show it? And so when thinking about this, the reality is that your message is a claim, right? So like my claim around what is a motivated mover one is like every real estate transaction starts with a life event. That's a claim. That's my claim. I believe that, right? And so every time I stand in front of a room and say that this is what I believe, the audience is asking one question back. Says who, right? Why do you think that? Prove it, right? And so this is where you get to show up with stories as your answer, right? And the thing about stories is this: facts tell, stories sell, right? So we've all been in presentations where they laid out numbers and facts and things like that, but the reality is that if you want to make a distinction, right? Most speakers don't talk about the stories well or do stories well, right? So again, facts tell, stories sell. And then the next piece of this is this fact right here. If you give an audience like every data point, research study, or statistic, typically they walk out of that room and forget most of what you said, right? Before you're even finished. But if you give them a good story or a moment that puts a face or a feeling to what they're learning from you, right? They'll remember that for far longer, right? And that's one of the reasons why I want you to have these core one-liners, because even that core one-liner becomes something that you say at the beginning, in the middle, at the end. Everything you do loops through that, right? Everything you're telling them draws them through that throughput, brings every story, every lesson, everything pulls through into that one core message. And the thing I want you guys to recognize most of all is this is not a technique. This is neuroscience to do this. Emotion anchors learning. And so the brain stores, experiences differently than it stores data, facts, or information. So because audiences rarely remember your bullet points, you have to get them to remember moments. Does that make sense? So, sorry. So this is why stories work. They build trust. And when they create trust, I think it's important that, these stories are going to prove that you did the work. Not that you studied the work, but that you actually lived it, right? Another thing that stories do is they illustrate the lesson. They show, what the idea looks like in real life, right? And not just in theory. And then, of course, stories also create that emotional memory. And emotion is the storage mechanism for learning. So if there's no emotion, there's no retention. And that is, like the quote, even just what Ollie said, right? Ollie talked about clients. I want them to, clients will remember how you make them feel, right? I think you said some version of that, Ollie, right? Well, that also reminds me of the Maya Angelou quote. People don't always remember what you say, but they will remember how you made them feel at the end of the day, right? That emotion is what ties to memory. So here's the first mistake, though, when it comes to stories, where a lot of professionals go wrong. And I want you to check yourself, right, against both I'm going to give you two mistakes. So this first one is mistake number one: they tell too many stories. They pile story on story on story. And by the end, the audience is entertained, but they don't have a lesson. They don't have a message. They don't have a pull through. They enjoyed the talk, but they can never really tell you what the talk was about, right? So that would be the first mistake. The second mistake is, they tell too many stories. They pile story on story on story. And by the end, the audience is entertained, but they don't have a lesson. They don't have a message. They don't have a pull through. They enjoyed the talk, but they can never really tell you what the talk was about, right? So big mistake that I think that a lot of people make when it comes to stories. And then the second is stories with no lesson. They tell stories without, having that pull through I talk about all the time. The story just kind of ends and then they move into the next story or to the next thing that they want to say. And so the audience is often left wondering, like, why? Why did you tell me that? And if you guys recall, I think I remember telling you, I was at an event once where I heard a speaker and she was great. Like, she told me ahead of time, she's like, I just built my TED Talk. I'm so excited to deliver it. And she did her version of this TED Talk. And I have to say, I have comments on it. My comments would be, number one, she did a beautiful job. She had a beautifully written script. She was energetic. She paused, she used she did all the technical things right. But the problem with her talk was I felt like I watched a Broadway performance, like a monologue, not at a real estate event where I expected to get a lesson. And so when you have those kinds of, that's the one thing I think, like, when people are looking to walk away from a keynote with a lesson, you want them to be clear on what that lesson was, not just entertained by, oh, I just watched you do this beautiful performance, but I don't understand what I got out of it. And I feel like I just wasted, 10, 20 minutes of my time hearing about your story, but I didn't get anything out of it, right? That's the thing we want to avoid. And I imagine, have any of you guys experienced that, where you heard a talk and you walked away from the talk and you were like, I don't know what I got out of that? I'm going to stop sharing just so I can see your
Yes,
faces.
especially in real estate.
Yeah, right?
I know you were talking about, people sounding the same with AI, but I remember when I was new in real estate before AI was even big, I was like, everything that people tell me to go to, or every professional that somebody tells me to listen to, they're saying the same thing. Like, nobody was saying something different until somebody actually did, and it like clicked. So yeah, it happens all the time. You're like, what did I just listen to? Or you're like, you guys just sound like a broken record.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else want to share here their frustration with that? No? Okay. But we all agree that that's happened. Yes. Okay. All right. Sorry. I got to go back to finding where's my screen to share again. Okay. So, so this is why, though, right? Because this is why this is frustrating, is because story is not meant, in this context, the story is not meant to be entertainment. It's meant to be evidence, right? It's meant to share, with your audience that your message is true, right? It's also there to define, like, give definition and meaning and helpfulness to your audience based on the lessons that you've learned and what you're sharing with them, right? So if the story, doesn't support your message, it doesn't belong. That's the hardest part, is that we're going to build up some stories today, but not all of them are going to go into your talk, not into this talk, right? So maybe it's a story for another talk that you're going to build one day, but maybe not this one. But that doesn't mean you don't want to document the story today, right? You are going to be looking for stories that align with the talk that you want to give and the core message, but you're also just going to be building up stories, because, my goal for you and my hope for you is that this will not be the last talk that you do or the only talk that you do. Eventually you will build many talks, right? Now, I will tell you again, as we're building talks, the goal here is that you will have one talk that you can duplicate many times, right? You could do it as a 10-minute keynote, a 30-minute, a 45-minute. And how you expand and contract that is through your storytelling, by the way. That's one of the ways you can expand and contract. So, for example, if you have a 10-minute talk, maybe you only have room for one story, or you have 3 stories, but they're short because they hit the point fast because you're so organized with it. Or if you have a 30-minute talk, you can go longer with the story. You can give more detail with the story, or you can tell a couple of more stories, right? And so on and so forth. What's also beautiful about this, when you do this, is when you're on a panel, guess what also you could do? You can leverage a story bank to land the plane, to get the lesson, right? Like the answer to the client, or to the audience, right? And what's beautiful about this too, that I want to remind you, is this strategy also works in your listing appointments, your buyer consultations. Building your story bank with the lesson at the end is going to be one of the best objection handling strategies you will ever have in your business, right? Because this becomes a tool that you can use to, guide your clients, to guide your audiences, because they're all audiences, right? Whether they're a buyer or seller in front of you that you're looking to work with, an agent you're trying to attract or recruit to your brokerage or team, or, an audience of peers and colleagues, or an audience of consumers, right? Depending whoever your audience is, having these stories in the story bank is going to be a powerful opportunity. But the goal here is to make sure that for any given talk, if the story doesn't support the lesson and the message that you're giving in that moment, it might not belong in that story, but that doesn't mean it's not important. So some of you, though, might be thinking, Kendall, I don't have any stories. And I hear that all the time. I don't have any good stories. My life, my business isn't that interesting. I often think that myself the same. I tell people every time someone wants to interview me for anything, I'm always like, why? I'm so boring. My life is boring. My world is boring to me anyway. But that's not true. And you really don't have a story problem. You just have a retrieval problem, right? And, you just need a system for helping you find your stories. And I'm going to help you with that today. Are you guys ready to get some help with retrieving your stories? Because you have plenty. Well, the career moment method or life moment method, depending on where you're ultimately going with your signature talk, this is how you are going to find your stories. This is where you're going to mine your stories. So where to find your stories? There's 3 places: turning points, unexpected lessons, and pattern recognition. And we're going to go through each one. So the first one is turning points, right? So turning points are the hinges of your career. These are moments where before and after kind of like split apart, right? And this is where maybe a decision you made changed your trajectory. It's a failure maybe that forced you to completely rethink how you do something. Also, it's a conversation maybe that you had with a mentor, a leader, a partner that cracked something open. Tamily talked about a turning point for her, a conversation she had with her husband, Roy, at her, one of the talks I heard her do last week for Gap Mastermind. That was a turning point where she had an aha moment. And most professionals usually have, at least 3 to 5 of these if you just stop to think and look, right? So that's the first one. The next one is unexpected lessons, right? What worked or failed that you did not expect. So these are moments often that surprised you. Yeah, where something worked when by all logic it should have failed, or something failed when you were certain it would have succeeded. Because we all have had those moments, right? And there's this gap between what you expected and what happened. That's where insight lives. That's what you're looking for here. Is there are those unexpected lessons. And then the last one is patterns, right? Or pattern recognition. And with patterns, this is something you see over and over again, right? These are the lessons sometimes that we learn slowly, right? We have to see it a bunch of times. Maybe it's a mistake you've watched someone make or yourself make over and over again, whether it's your work, your clients' work, or something you see in the industry, right? I know, like, that's one of my big ahas is I can recognize patterns sometimes, and I'm like, ooh, I don't want to do that, right? My mom taught me you don't have to make the mistake to learn the lesson, right? Or maybe it's a behavior that you keep seeing, right? And high performers or average performers that, or something that maybe high performance have that others don't, or that underperformers are doing that high achievers don't do, right? Like there's a distinction, there's a pattern there. And sometimes that's often where like your most valuable stories will come from, because they position you as someone who sees what others miss, right? Any questions about those so far? Okay, good. So here's what I want you to understand though about these categories. These categories are not just stories. I like to think of these as addresses. These tell you where to look. Tying in some little real estate metaphor here, right? And, these are the addresses where you find the evidence to your lesson. All right. So I want you to, next, we're going to talk about, how to build these stories once you find the moment. But before we go there, I'd love to find out from you, which of these categories feels richest for you, right? Like, which of these feels like something that, like, right off the top of your head, you see something. Why don't you guys share with me of the three, pattern, unexpected lessons, turning points?
I think for me, turning points can be powerful, and I inadvertently like did that.
One of them.
So that came natural, I guess, with trying to tie the story with the lesson. And I think
Yeah.
pattern recognition could be great too, just to give perspective on when you do see something that other people miss. You can have more authority or more leverage because it's a teachable moment for somebody.
Yeah. How about you? Any of you see, like, what of those three categories or those three different types of stories, mining, which one kind of like hits you like, ooh, I could think of like two or three stories just in that area alone?
I think for me, it's the what was it, the unexpected lesson?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like that's the story of my life. Everything is either like it went well or I learned something from it. So there's definitely a lot of those that I can
Draw from.
draw from.
Absolutely. Maisha, did you unmute? Did you have something to say? Uh-oh, we can't hear you, Queen.
I would say like turning points are probably. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
I would say turning points would be what I would focus on.
Very good. Good. I love that. I just want to make sure that you guys realize, like, each of you has one or more of all of these, right? But it's just a matter of when you start to think about it, like, oh, here's an example, right? Of what I've been working on, or what I've been thinking about, or what is working for me, right? So, the next step here is, the thing sorry, I did not mean to mute myself. Once you've identified a moment, you now need a structure, right? And that's what we're going to get into next, is to turn this into something teachable. And that's because a lot of people think that storytelling is like, oh, you're just such a good storyteller, like that it's a gift or a talent, right? But it's not. It's a framework. There's a structure to being a good storyteller. So you don't have to be naturally good at telling stories. So long as you understand the framework for telling a story well, you can duplicate that and repeat that over and over and over again. So now we're going to talk about the four parts of every story that actually helps people follow along. And so those four parts are this: context, conflict, discovery, and lesson. Those are the four parts that we're going to focus on as a group and as you're building your stories, right? So let's talk about them one by one. So context is not your autobiography, right? It's not your resume. It's actually just the minimum amount of scene setting, so the audience feels like they're connected, they're in the moment with you. Like they can, oh, let me set the scene. Let me know where you're standing so I know how to stand next to you in this, right? So sometimes that's, where are you in your career at that moment? What was the situation? You just want to give them enough information to join you in the moment, right? Not much more than that. Next, we have conflict, right? So conflict is where the story is like, really, it's why the stories we're telling at the end of the day. there has to be attention. There has to be a problem. There needs to be a gap. There needs to be a moment where something's at stake, right? There's risk, and so you can have payoff, right? So no conflict. If there's no conflict in your story, there is no story. It's just a sequence of events. And that is not going to be necessarily helpful to that audience, right? So conflict, what I want you to write down on this in terms of notes is conflict is what makes the audience lean in. This is where they're like, all right, I'm in the room with you. Ooh, now I get it. Now I know why I'm in the room with you, right? Now I understand what we're going after. And then here is where the ahas come, right? This is the discovery. So discovery is the turn. This is a moment where your thinking shifted, your behavior changed, your understanding expanded, right? That aha moment. And oftentimes this can be the most vulnerable part of the story, which is why it's so powerful. So you're showing the audience where you were wrong or where you were incomplete, where the lesson was before you learned what you now are trying to teach them and share with them, right? This is where you're transferring like that aha moment to them. Like my mother said, this is where you teach them how to learn the lesson without, you don't have to make the mistake to learn the lesson, right? Learn from my mistakes so that you don't have to suffer like I did. And then the last piece here is the lesson. This is where the story becomes the talk. Without the lesson, the story is just a diary entry, right? It has no value to them. Without the lesson or with the lesson, it now is evidence. It's now proof of what you're saying is true, right? So the lesson is how you hand over the insight to the audience. This is where you land the plane. This is here where you say to them, this is why this is important to you, why you need to be listening to me right now, right? So we have context, conflict, discovery, lesson. Those are your 4 parts of any good story. So I want to give you like a sentence to practice a way to build on a story, right? So this template is not necessarily your script or anything like that, right? I don't want you to think of this sentence as the script, but you can use this to put this in your own language, but it becomes a structure that allows you to move through the 4 beats, right? Early in my career, I believed context. Then this happened, conflict. It made me realize discovery. Now I understand lesson. Does that make sense? And those of you that have your cameras on, I can see a handful of you. I see you nodding, so I'm going to keep moving.
Yes.
Beautiful. Thank you. So early in my career, I believed context, right? And I'll give you guys an example. Would you guys like an example? Like, because I have my talks that I've done. So I have the talk called The Motivated Mover, right? I actually wrote a book about it, The Motivated Mover Method. And, my lesson and all of like I have, well, here, let me go through it in the order. So, early in my career, I was swimming in blue ocean. I was working with a pipeline of motivated movers, but I actually didn't know it, right? So here's the conflict. What happened was someone told me that if I wanted to grow my business, I wanted to scale, I need to hire a coach. So I hired a coach. I hired Mark Ferry at the time, and he taught me how to call expireds for sell by owners, neighborhoods, and more, right? He basically taught me real estate was a numbers game. And if I wanted to sell more houses, I need to talk to more people. And he's like, and here's the people. This is how you find the list. And you go dial for dollars, right? Cold calls. But here's what I learned. Here's the discovery. I realized that I had abandoned my blue ocean for red ocean. The competition for those calls and those dials that he was asking me to make was steep. And I was getting exhausted because I was calling all the same people that everyone else was calling. And I learned, at that time about AI, predictive analytics, and the data Ds. And so here was my lesson that I pulled out of this. That finding MQLs, which are what I refer to as motivated, qualified, and loyal clients, happens before they identify themselves as buyers or sellers. Life events trigger transitions, And my job was to convert the compelled and not the curious. See how I told you a story? And you were tracking and you were like, oh, yeah, right? But it wasn't more than 2 minutes. You know, it was maybe 60-second story, but I brought you through, set the scene, the journey, the context. I gave you the conflict, what I discovered, and then what my lesson was. So you're not just writing stories today. We are building a story bank. And I think like this is really important because, like I said earlier, this is how you expand and contract your speaking engagements. And this is also how am I doing on time? Okay. This is also how you're going to prove and give evidence to the lessons that you're trying to teach, the core message, the before and after transition. This is how you're going to move your audience. All the things so everything we're doing here through these 6 weeks is building a block upon a block upon a block upon a block, right? Block 1 was, what do you even want to say, right? What is it that you feel is valuable to your audience that you want to share with them? And then block number 2 this week is, how are you going to prove that what you're saying is right? What's the story? What's the message? Like, what's the lessons? I'm sorry. And what are the stories that help prove that lesson? So really your goal here today is to come up with 3 to 5 stories in your bank, right? Over the, not only just now, but into the future. And here it's really important to have quality over quantity. Remember, today you don't have to fully match a story to the core message that we've talked about last week. But I think it's important to come up with your stories and figure out what the core message of that story is, so you can see if it aligns or not. Because maybe you'll find that your stories build a different lesson. It might influence what you did last week, right? So before we get to next week. So please do not, skip this step. So for each story, it's going to be important that you have, a moment, a lesson, and the connection to the audience. And before we move on from here, I just want to remind you, like, today, the goal isn't to write polished stories, right? You're just building that raw inventory, that bank, so that you have usable material. And that doesn't mean, like, again, too, as you build this bank and maybe you get 3 to 5, maybe you get 10 stories. I don't know. Like, you all have rich histories and experience in your businesses. But it's to document this stuff so that as you're building your talks, you know what to plug in, when, and where, right? To create a loop there. And so this third piece that I'm going to give you next after this is super important, because a lot of people will skip this next step that I'm going to tell you about. And it's actually, truly one of the most important ones, right? And that is because a great story without a message is just a distraction. And a good story with a message becomes a weapon, right? And so that's why it's really important that you spend some time really going, giving this the attention that it deserves, so that you can build on this. So in your workbook, I believe you should have a section for, sorry, and yes. And I made it super big for you, so you can use pen, pencil. I don't know. I recommend you guys use pencils with this, like bust out, because you might have to like erase. But, as you're like working through this, but I want you to start, we're going to spend some time. I'm going to give you guys some time on the clock here to start thinking about some story moments, the lessons, and then how the story connects to the message that you are trying to build, right? And whether it does or doesn't, and be honest with yourself. And it's okay if it doesn't. That doesn't mean you don't document the story anyway, because like I said, it might become a story for a different lesson that you'll use later. But I think this is step 1 to figuring out which stories that you have already in the bank, already living inside you, that prove or evidence of what the core message that you want to deliver on. So before I have you guys start building your story bank, real quick, I'll give you another quick example. The story might be about, hey, I was, my first year leading a team. I tried to control every decision, right? That might be the note. Lesson: leadership is about building systems, not controlling people, right? And then the connection to the message, the goal is operational leadership replaces micromanagement. Like literally that's existed in my own team, right? Like we've learned to improve behavior through operational excellence, right? And through systems and not just um, like trying to tell everybody what to do. So we're going to get started. We're going to spend a few minutes. I'm going to set the timer in just a second to start building your story bank. Start with your easiest story, the one that's already sitting right at the surface for you right now. You can always go back and add others once that one is mapped. But start thinking about some stories that you have in the story bank. And I usually recommend that you guys go off camera while you think about this and then come back on camera after the timer's up, and we'll move on to the next step. So please go ahead and get started.
Can you remind me, Kendall, we are building, like, are there 3 things that we need to kind of, like, we have the story, but do we just have the story in our head, or?
Yeah, you're going to write out the story moment, and it's in your workbook. I could tell you're in your car, but in your workbook, it'll have the story moment, the lesson, and how it connects to the message. That's the goal.
Lesson connection.
Yep.
Okay.
And then eventually you're going to break up the story into the 4 components that we talked about, which was, context, conflict. We're not building that part yet. Right now, you're just thinking of what's the story that I'm going to tell, what's the lesson from it, and how does it connect to what I'm trying to teach my audience.
Gotcha.
All right, for the sake of time, because I'm running out, would any one person like to quickly share a story with us? It's, you don't have to tell us the whole story. Maybe just this happened and what it taught me. Do I have one volunteer just to kind of give an example?
I'll volunteer. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll just give the highlight reel, as I think that's what you really want.
Yeah,
So
I don't
when
just the quick what happened and what you learned from it.
So when I was a new agent, I had a broker who told me that I needed to take myself on like luxury trips and do luxury things for myself because it would make me work hard. And at the time, of course, he was crazy because for one, I couldn't afford him, like taking first class flights and staying in 5-star hotels. But what I learned from it when I finally got to a point to where I could do that was where the real wealth was in generational wealth, being able to show my family, like my son, a softer life, being able to show him that luxury is okay, but how you have to work hard for it. So there was definitely a lesson in it. But at first, yes, I thought the man was crazy and off his rocker until I earned enough to try it.
Yeah.
And it completely changed the trajectory of how I moved and how I looked at wealth. I didn't look at it as just money. I looked at it as a way to give myself choices, a way to give myself a different type of lifestyle that I would not have normally had I not, put in the work.
Yeah, absolutely. So funny you say that. Like Mike Ferry taught something similar. He's like, go buy something expensive so it'll force you to work hard to generate the money to actually have it. He did something very similar. So I remember I got that same lesson many, many moons ago. But well, and thank you, Maisha, for sharing. Thank you for volunteering. And I just want to say to you ladies, what you guys just did over the last 6 to 7 minutes is something most professionals they never do, right? And they don't do it as a part of their speaking preparation. Because what you've just done is you've identified by putting these stories together and by continuing that work, right? Because it doesn't just stop here. Obviously, you need more than 7 minutes to really do this work. But you basically identified the value in your experience. That's what you've done, right? So you don't just have a story, you extracted a lesson. And that is really, really important. So I think that's also, too, the difference between a professional speaker and someone who's just a storyteller at the end of the day. So, basically, I want you to realize that, now that we've completed or started today's work, as you finish this work, you now will have a story bank. You'll have, if you can continue to work on the homework, which I recommend as we finish this call, that maybe while it's still fresh, you spend some time doing that. But I will work to get this video up into the school so you can rewatch it, re-listen to it, whatever you need to do as quickly as possible. But you now have a story bank, right? You have the makings of a story bank. You're going to have the makings of 3 to 5 teachable moments. And more importantly, you're going to have proof or evidence of the message that you're trying to give your clients, right? Or your audience. So week 1, as a recap, gave you the message, right? That you want to share with your audience. And week 2 is about building proof, right? Through stories. And so next week, I'm super excited because the lens is going to shift. Before, up until now, we've been talking about you, your message, your stories, your insight. And week 3 kind of turns that camera around, and we're going to do something that a lot of people don't do also when it comes to preparing their talks, is we're going to focus on the audience and basically make sure that this audience finds value in your message. So, because here's the problem, you could have the right stories, the right ideas, and still leave the room unimpacted and unaffected. And I want to teach you guys through next week, like how to read the room, how to prepare for a room, how to make adjustments without changing your entire talk, based on who the audience is, right? And so week 3 is about audience ownership. So it's where you're going to learn how to adapt your message to the assignment. So my last thing here, let me share my screen so I can remind you guys what your homework is. So here's your homework for next week. You need to come up with a minimum of 3 to 5 stories. You need to identify the moment in 2 to 4 sentences, what the lesson was in 1 sentence, and its connection to your message, like draw the bridge, right? That is your homework for assignment. I would like for you to send that to me at least 48 hours before our next class. And for those of you that missed it, I think I put in the chat. Let me go find the chat again. We moved next week's meeting. I'm going to put it again in the chat. And for those listening to the video, it's going to be next week, Thursday, May 7th at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific. So please update your calendar, move this one. I'll also move it in Zoom. Hopefully that doesn't affect the rest of the week and it's just the 1 week. But that is, your homework is due 2 days before that. So I'm throwing that back in the chat again. Again, focus on quality over quantity. 3 really good stories well mapped is more important than 5 vague ones. Right? And lastly, I want to leave you with this. Your experience has value. Let me just repeat that for you in the back. Your experience brings so much value. Now we're going to start using it to make an impact on others, right? So any questions? If anyone has to hop off, because I know we're at time, just a little bit over. I can stay for a minute or two to do some questions, but I am at an event and I have to get back over to the hotel, which is
I
like
don't have a question. More of I
comment.
used, yeah, for, because I know writing, like your brain operates and is faster than what your hand can take. Leverage voice memo and just dictate the story to voice memo and then take that transcript and get it organized. And then that way it'll be easier for you to write.
Yeah, and here's where I think it, if you want to leverage AI here, this could be an opportunity for you to leverage AI consciously and strategically, which is, brain dump your stories into AI and say, okay, I need you to organize that into these frameworks, into, context, conflict, discovery, lesson, help me identify if I'm missing something here in my storytelling. And then also help me identify, give me a short, brief description of story, lesson, but make sure before you send that to me, like edit your AI, because I don't want to feel like I'm just reading an AI output, to be honest. I want to feel like I'm listening to your voice because that's how you are going to speak it on stage. I want to hear it that way.
Yeah, that's why I use voice memo. It's because it's not AI. Just take that transcript and then start organizing it.
I was gonna add because it's I see how you could use voice memo, but I just use Google Docs and on the phone. On the phone you have the microphone feature and you could speak into it and then it'll like even tell you like word count and character and all that stuff. So you can know how much you're speaking into it, right? And it's not AI, it's still you. So be another alternative to that.
No, I love it. I love, love, love it. I love that you're sharing tips on how you each can help one another to complete the assignments. But any feedback for today? How do you guys feel about today? Did you learn something, think about something differently? Did I help reframe how you are going to approach your storytelling going forward?
I'll share real quick. I wrote a book 5 years ago, and of course, I was not a book writer. I wasn't even a reader. And I didn't have this. This wasn't my vision to write the book. Someone else said you should do this, and I just ran with that idea. I thought it was great. And then I realized, oh my God, what am I doing here? I'm just dumping my whole story. And it's supposed to be, I'll tell you, the book is Married in Real Estate, but I said, there's barely any real estate in it. It's more of an autobiography. So I was not proud of it. Not, I mean, it's my story, it's my life, but I was not proud of it because I kept thinking, okay, what is the reader walking away with? And I became painfully aware of that towards the end of the book, where I tried to really put some like lessons and values, but I myself didn't figure out those lessons and values until I was hearing myself or reading my own story. Then I started seeing those things, how they were, how the patterns that were in my own story. So, anyways, long story short, I want to rewrite the book so that I can feel proud about it. But it's a big task, and I didn't have the framework to do this. So, literally, it's been 5 years since I wrote it that I'm like, I should write it over. And it took me a few years to start it. I actually started last year and still dragging through it because it just feels like such a big task. And this gives me a lot to work with. So thank you.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you, Rebecca. I appreciate that. And I'm honored to be a part of this journey with each and every one of you ladies. And I know that you all have so much value to give. And part of my heart's aspiration is I've learned so many lessons, and I'm like, I feel like for those of you guys that know, I quit my job at XP because I knew that I was being called to do something else, and God had given me these talents and taught me these lessons. And he's like, Kendall, it's now time for you to go teach others. Like, it's time for you to share with others. This is how you make your impact. And because that's what I really want, is impact. So the fact that you're sharing that to me, Rebecca, like, means so much to me, because that means that the work that I'm doing is meaningful. And
Okay.
and I'm so thankful for that. So thank you for that feedback. So,
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing this, because I think it is valuable. And hardly anybody is teaching this part. And how do we become better speakers, presenters, or storytellers? You know, we need this type of training. So thank you.
yay. Thank you. Thank you for investing in yourself and in me with this as well. So, all right, ladies. Well, God bless. Be well. For the sake of this video, I'm going to stop recording, and I'll see you guys next week. So next Thursday, new time. I'll put it in school. If you're not already in school and you're watching this video, please go get in there and pay attention. That's where I'm keeping notes and keeping track. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.